Good morning, 222. When I hear the idea of strong and courageous, which is this week's topic, I think of someone who's done a mighty physical deed. Today, we're going to look at Caleb, as I want to take a deeper look into what being strong and courageous really looks like. Caleb was one of the 12 spies that was sent into the promised land to look to determine whether the Israelites would be capable and able to go into that land and take it over. By the way, just to take a moment, remember now on our manhood language sheets, judiciously chooses was Joshua, obedient to Christ is Gideon, and today's lesson is on Caleb if you're following along. Just want you to have that and to know where we are. Caleb was a representative of the tribe of Judah. That's why he was chosen for this mission as a spy. And Jesus would, of course, later be born from the tribe of Judah. I find that interesting. Now, God had told the Israelites that the land would be theirs, right? So in Numbers 13, this is where the Bible tells this particular story. The Lord said to Moses, "Send some men to explore the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelites, and from each ancestral tribe send one of its leaders." Caleb from Judah, right? Now, they departed and they came back to Moses and Aaron and all the congregation of the children of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. They brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. They told them and said, "We went to the land where you sent us. It truly flows with milk and honey, and this is the fruit. Nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land are strong. The cities are fortified and very large, and moreover, we saw descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in this land of the south. The Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the banks of the Jordan." Well, then Caleb spoke up and he said, and this is so great, "Let us go up at once to take possession, for we are able to overcome it." He knew why, because God had promised it to them. But the men who had gone up with him, and Joshua, I might add, said this, "We're not able to go up against the people, for they're stronger than we are." And they gave the children of Israel a bad report of the land which they had spied out, saying, "The land through which we have gone and spied is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw in it are men of great statures." These are big dudes. "There we saw the giants, the descendants of Anak came from giants, came from the giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so were we in their sight." But Caleb and Joshua were convinced that they would win the land because the Lord had already done miraculous things for the nation of Israel in saving it, bringing it out of Egypt. And Caleb was determined to see things from God's perspective, not from man's. By the way, unlike some people, Caleb lived this way his whole life. At age 85, he was actually given his inheritance in the mountains, and he said, "Give me that mountain. I want to take it." What a vigorous and strong and courageous fellow. God had said about Caleb this, "But my servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit in him and has followed me fully, I will bring him into the land where he went, and his descendants shall inherit it." So Caleb was strong and courageous in a physical and in an emotional and in a mental way. But today we are seldom called upon to fight for the Lord as Caleb was. Courage is much less visible. Strength of character is demanded as much or more than is physical strength. Strength of character. Doing the right thing in the face of peer pressure demands guts. A man who would have known fear and hatred was Martin Luther King Jr., who was a leader of the nonviolent civil rights movement, and he said this about courage. "Courage is an inner resolution to go forward despite obstacles, an inner resolution to go forward despite obstacles. Man, if anybody would know about that, it would be Martin Luther King. Do you have any drop-dead convictions? Caleb did. Martin Luther King did. Do you have any drop-dead convictions? A belief that you will never compromise? What if ISIS was going to cut your throat unless you recanted your belief in Jesus? You say, well, I don't know what would happen, as if that's the first time in history that occurred. No, back in the Romans, the people that went in the Colosseum were largely Christians who were presented with the same opportunity, bad choice of words, but they were presented either recant your faith in Jesus, or we'll put you in the lion's den. We'll saw you in half. So ISIS is nothing new in that respect. The Romans gave the Christians that very choice. Mark Twain said this about courage. Courage is resistance to fear, mastery of fear, not the absence of fear. I think that's really important to understand. Guys, fear is common, it's understandable, it's human. But the people who show strength and courage are the ones who battle through the fear. And not all convictions are challenged by death. I think some of the most difficult things for me personally was when I was an adult and I had children and they came to me and they said, we'd like to watch such and such a movie, and I had to say no. And of course I got, well, all our friends are watching that, and of course all their friends were watching it. But nevertheless, it was inappropriate, and I, as the leader of my home, needed to stand up and say, no, we're not going to watch that. At least not in my presence and not in our home. What about sex outside of marriage? And by the way, no matter what your age is, you know, everybody thinks, well, you're talking about young people who've never been married, they're in their late teens or their early 20s, whatever. No, I'm talking about people who have been divorced. I'm talking about people who have been widowed, who are under that same admonition from the Lord not to be messing around with sex outside of marriage. But they come up with these excuses like, well, you don't understand. I've had sex before and I need to have sex. Yes, I do understand. But that doesn't negate God's word. It doesn't negate what he said. At times like these, we need to remember the advice given to us in the Bible in 1 Corinthians 16:13. Be on your guard. Man, you got to be vigilant. Stand firm in the faith. Be courageous. Be strong. Right? Again, be on your guard. Stand firm in the faith. Be courageous and be strong. In other words, we need to have preset, unchangeable, drop-dead convictions. And we need to live by them, even if it would be less stressful to cave in and let the easy overtake the best. And let the easy overtake the best. Jesus had drop-dead convictions. In John 2:14 through 16, Jesus went in and overturned tables in the temple, whipped people. He drove them out of the temple. And I've used this series of verses before to show that Jesus was tough and hard-nosed. He was not a wimp. But notice, this is not the way he acted normally. This was an unusual event, precipitated because people had made a mockery of God's house. And Jesus was defending his Father. In fact, his normal response to unfair treatment was found in Matthew 5:39 when he said, "But I tell you not to resist an evil person, but whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also." We live in a society that just, even in a Christian society, that just somewhere not, we've lost that. We've lost that understanding that Jesus said that there is strength in the ability to turn away from a fight more than there is to actually involve in the fight. Is aggression okay, for example, in rugby or football? Sure, because those are the rules of the game. Would Jesus have hit hard and hit often? Sure, because that's proper in those sports. Would Jesus have played dirty to get back an opponent? No. What if the opponent played dirty? Still, no, because that is not the moral character of those games. True courage demands, watch this, this is hard. True courage demands gentleness. As Pastor Bo said when he played Walter Mellon in The Fruits of the Spirit when he was 11 years old, meekness isn't weakness. When my mother was dying, my father asked her, he said, "Joe Camille, besides me, who is the best man you have ever known?" And she responded, "Grandfather Stevens." And he asked why, and she said, "Because he was the gentlest man I have ever known." Because he was the gentlest man I have ever known. Men who hit their wives are cowards. Let me say that again. Men who hit their wives are cowards. It's easy to blow up and get mad at your wife and kids, but real men are spirit-controlled and gentle. They are composed. One of my favorite authors is Max Lucado, and he said this. Listen carefully, please. He said, "I choose gentleness. Nothing is won by force. I choose to be gentle. If I raise my voice, may it only be in praise. If I clench my fist, may it only be in prayer. And if I make a demand, may it only be of myself." I kind of went through that a little bit as a coach, and I thought, wow, that's pretty hard on me because the nature of the game. However, as a human being, I'm trying to say, oh, that I might live that way. I choose gentleness. So here are some takeaways from this week's lesson. Number one, when we are in God's will, we have nothing to fear. Note Caleb and Joshua. Number two, the real test of a brave man is not absence of fear, but the courage to battle through it. Number three, we must have drop-dead convictions, and we must have them before they are challenged. Before they are challenged. Number four, it takes a real man to have the courage not to fight physically, yet at the same time not to give in to bullies. In fact, fighting is often easier than is controlling yourself. Remember, I choose gentleness. Nothing is won by force. I choose to be gentle. If I raise my voice, may it only be in praise. And if I clench my fist, may it only be in prayer. And if I make a demand, may it only be of myself. Be intentional this week. Honor Jesus. See you next Saturday, Lord willing, and the creeks don't rise.